Greetings, everyone. Dr. Brian Scott with you. This is Insights to the End Times. We're studying, as you may know, Bible scriptures as to where we may be on God's end time timetable, on his end time schedule. We're getting closer and closer to the end of the age, and we're going to study more about the actual timing and how those times go together as we get into subsequent weeks. Right now, we're looking at Matthew chapter 24, which is called an end time verse or chapter in the book of Matthew. There's a similar chapter verse in Mark chapter 13 and Luke chapter 17 and Luke chapter 21. Very similar statements are being made by Jesus in these chapters. But earlier this week, if you tuned in with us, as we kick off this brand new 2024 year, today is today is Friday, January the 5th. We are looking at what Jesus answered his disciples when they asked questions to him. They said, "Hey, what will be the sign of your coming? And secondly, what will be the sign of the end of the age?" So they're referring to essentially what we're studying right now. What are the signs leading up to the return of Jesus Christ to this earth? And what are the signs leading up to the end of the age that we're living in right now? We are living in the very, very last part of time before the 7 years of tribulation and before the Battle of Armageddon and before the coming of Jesus Christ to set up the 1,000-year reign that he will have, known as the millennial reign of Christ. So we're getting closer and closer to that. Now, he has already answered those questions to a degree. He said, you're going to see a lot of deception. He refers to deception. That is the ability by someone to lead you off course, the ability to share information with you or an opinion with you that you follow to your detriment, and you end up being led off course, being led astray, being confused, etc. And we see all kinds of this occurring everywhere we turn. This is what the nightly news seems to be all about. We can't tell whether it's true or not. You know, they'll share something with us, right, a breaking report today, but then tomorrow have to refute what they said and say, well, we got it wrong, and here's what. But they don't usually say that. They'll just say, we got more information, and here's what the information says. I could go on and on that because it does irritate me that we know the verse says. Jesus referred to it in Matthew chapter 8. He said, you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. The only truth we can depend on anymore seems to be in the Bible. I really do feel as if we're getting to a point where most everything else, you're not quite sure. You're just not quite sure. But he did go on to give some other signs of the last days, and I want to read a couple of those verses to you. Verse number 6 in Matthew 24. You probably know the verse. It says, you'll hear of wars and rumors of wars. Don't be troubled. All these things must come to pass, but the end is not quite here yet. Verse 7, nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in various places. So Jesus shifts gear from the quality of relationship and the quality of information, which he refers to as a lot of deception going on. Now he starts to speak in terms of physical events that will be occurring. And we're going to come back and deal with the wars and rumors of war, nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom, as we continue. But today I want to look at the latter portion of verse 7, where he says there's going to be famines, and there's going to be earthquakes, and there's going to be pestilence in various places. So let's look at, for a moment, at famines. Famines don't really exist to too great an extent in North America. You know, I'm coming to you from Canada, from southern Ontario. Famine isn't something that we deal with here on an ongoing basis. In fact, in all my years, I don't recall us having something called a famine. We've had some shortages of various things owing to weather conditions, and maybe the corn crop wasn't as strong as it was last year and so on. but we haven't had famines. But famines do exist. They're very real, and they occur in countries outside of North America as a rule. And where they exist, it means that people are going to bed at night without a proper meal. Thousands are dying every year because of a lack of proper food and a lack of water. Water's a major, major issue. But that's not the problem we have in North America. So because we don't have the problem here in North America, that verse that talks about famines really doesn't mean much to us. But I want to give you some statistics to show you that it is real, and it does exist, and it's getting worse and worse. In 2021, that's just 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago now that we've moved into 2024, there were about 828 million people suffering from worldwide hunger. That's about 10% of the world's population. That's a pretty strong percentage. It's up by 46 million from the previous year. Now, that's one statistic that should be startling. But here's one that's even worse. 2,130,000,000. That's 2.01 billion people suffer from food insecurity. That occurs primarily in Africa and Latin America. There's an insecurity about food, whether or not they're going to have food. That's a big number. That's about 25% of the world's population are suffering from food insecurity. Now, the World Food Program, it reports that as of June 2022, that 49 million people in 43 different countries are at risk of famine. And that's up from 27 million the year before. So that percentage increase is massive. To go from 27 million up to 49 million, you're talking about a 75% increase in the number of people who are at risk of entering into a famine-like situation. Wow. These reports that I studied today indicate that 10,000 children die every day. 10,000 children die every day from chronic poor nutrition. Folks, famine is real. It may not touch us here, but it's real. And because it's so real, we have to realize Jesus knew what he was saying when he said, here's some more signs of the very end. You're going to have famines. You're going to have worldwide food shortages. And this is very prevalent in countries in southern Africa, for instance. It's prevalent in a country like Venezuela. It's prevalent in Latin America. Let me give you one more statistic before we close today. 780 million people. 780 million people. That's almost 10% of the world's population. They are living on less than $1.90. $1.90. That's less than $2 a day. They're living on less than $2 a day. That's almost 10% of the world's population. Famine, food, famine, finances, famine is a strong, major issue. Jesus prophesied about it. We ought to recognize that what he says is coming to pass. And even though it doesn't affect us every day, we ought to open our eyes up to what's really going on around the world and sense the need to see, hey, these are events that are occurring, and Jesus said they would. Tomorrow, we're wrapping up the week. I want to share with you about some earthquakes that are occurring. This is also very real. See you tomorrow.